22, special town council meeting to order. Item number 1, council workshop, neighborhood meeting, 1967 Mineral Spring Avenue. Zone change, council workshop and neighborhood meeting for zone change. Information on property located at 1967 Mineral Spring Avenue. Councilman Martone will be a few minutes late. Councilman Famagetti has a work obligation, and Councilman Amorigi is on Zoom. So I believe the representatives from Douglas Construction have a PowerPoint. If you want to go ahead.
Yes, we're
Just state your name. Can they state their name?
So my name is Nicholas Dragarian. I'm one of the owners of Douglas Construction, representing Douglas Construction as the applicant. Paul Sarabian, other owner of Douglas Construction, here with me as well tonight. And I know that Ralph is going to get us set up so that we can get this PowerPoint screen shared onto the screen.
He's on that now. Ralph's doing that now.
Should be coming on shortly. There you are.
Okay, thank you, Ralph.
All right, so as I discussed with Mary, I need to be able to speak into the mic, but our intention tonight is to sort of address this presentation to you, the public, so it's all right.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna try to do this a little higher. How's that? So, there we go. So I'm assuming everybody here received our letter. If you did not receive our letter, the purpose of this meeting is to sort of give the public and the abutters and the neighbors adjacent to this project an opportunity to hear from us as the applicant, who we are, what we're looking to do there, versus our backs always kind of being turned to you and presenting to the council or the planning board. So what we've done is just created a PowerPoint presentation that's going to walk you through the nuts and bolts of what's been presented. Of public record is, you know, the significant zone change application and the plans and the master plan approvals and everything else. And the intent is to not necessarily include all of this because some of it's a little bit redundant, but all of the kind of the hot ticket items, I think are represented here. So who's Douglas Construction? We're a general contractor and a developer. We're located at 90 Douglas Pike in Smithfield. So we're just over the line. We're right at the intersection of Twin River Road and Douglas Pike and Route 7 there. We're founded in 1957. So we've been around for quite a while. We're a third generation family owned company.
That's got to be Councilman Martone.
All participation is welcome. So like I said, we're headquartered in Smithfield. We specialize in ground up self-performing construction. One of the difference between us and a lot of general contractors in today's day and age, we actually swing the hammers. We employ carpenters, we employ site laborers, site technicians, operators, equipment operators. The only thing we really don't do is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. We pour our own floors, we build our own foundations, all of our own light gauge metal framing, et cetera. We specialize in commercial, industrial, and retail predominantly. We've done some residential. It's not necessarily our forte from a construction perspective. And we also specialize in land acquisition and local development. We have a number of local developments that they're not highlighted in here, but throughout Smithfield and Lincoln, we have a number of properties that we've put together. The other side of our business is really just getting into the self-performing. The reason that I'm highlighting heavy site, civil, and structural as a contractor is that a lot of times developers, I think, come in and they propose what they're going to do in a town, and they're going to hire a general contractor. You're looking at the general contractor. And so they're going to hire a general contractor, and that general contractor is pretty much going to hire a bunch of subcontractors. And you have to rely on who the subcontractor is to do a good job, what the quality of the contract is between the GC, the subcontractor, and the GC and the developer. And there's a lot of loss of control between what the property looks like today and what the end product's going to be what the construction phasing is going to look like, how clean the development's going to be, et cetera. We are the general contractor. We own the excavators. We set the curb, we pave the asphalt, we build the foundations. That's who we are. That's what we do. So we self-perform those tasks, which I personally think for you neighbors is important. When there's an issue on the job site, you come to our office or you come to the job trailer and you're talking to a Douglas Construction employee, not a representative of a general contractor hired by some developer that you've never met. Okay, so development specifics. It's a complete redevelopment of the parcel. We have a proposed self-storage facility, proposed retail banking location, and a proposed restaurant or coffee shop. And included in the development will be 1 acre of new green space. For all of you that are familiar with the parcel, it's essentially a parking lot, one residential property that the fire station has played roughshod with over the course of the last year. That's ready to fall down. That's coming down. The fire station and municipal offices, that's all going to go away. And we will be adding at least 1 acre of green space, as well as brand new construction. So the existing site, I don't want to spend too much time here because all of you know what it is. We have the former safety complex, which houses the police station, fire station, rescue. There was a car impound location there. There were some municipal town offices. The entire site was occupied by industrial, commercial buildings and uses. It's parking lot. There's a relatively high traffic count based on the former use, as well as the municipal fueling station. And by the way, as I'm going through this, I know that there's a process by which if there are questions, you have to kind of come up, sign in and ask for the record. But if there are any questions and you need me to go back or talk about something, feel free to interrupt. I want to try to keep it relatively informal. We're here to answer your questions and address any concerns you may have. So here are just some street views. This is going to be Mineral Spring and McGuire. You can kind of see the fire station there. We're just going to kind of just go right down the street. This is looking into the facility from the backside off McGuire. You have the fueling station at the corner of McGuire and Bourne. This is looking kind of towards Bourne from McGuire. You can see as a point of reference, I think it's important to note that that apartment building, as well as the one behind it, you have 3 stories there, 4 stories behind that, and 5 stories up the street. That's not good for anybody. My computer is restarting, so I apologize for that, everybody. What I can do though, is continue forward. And when that comes back on, we'll deal with it then. So what I want to do, or the purpose of the next number of slides, was to go through the comments that we had received from the public. Actually, if you bear with me 1 second, I can open this up on my phone and it'll allow me to keep pace better. Just give me 1 second, please. Okay. So we'll get back to this, and once that reloads, there's renderings and drawings and examples of buildings I want you to see and all that, but just as far as keeping this together. So the approved master plan, which again, we'll put back up on the screen, all right? It includes new curb cuts and entryways, new asphalt paving, new sidewalks, limited parking requirements, reduced side street access compared to what it is today. Landscape buffering, dark sky lighting, and all new construction. What I'm going to do now is just highlight the concerns that have been publicly brought to the attention of both the planning board and the town council in the public meetings. So the primary concerns so far have been a 3-story building and the height associated with that building, neighboring views from McGuire Road, Bourne Avenue, traffic increases on the side access streets, pedestrian safety on side access streets as it relates to potential traffic increases, evening light pollution, self-storage hours of operation, self-storage building facade and detail, as well as the orientation of the coffee shop and the banking facility. So just going through, and I'm going to do my best not to just mundanely read off of all of this. We'll elaborate on it as we go. But from a developer responsiveness perspective, It's important to note that the proposed building height limitation in both the commercial general zone and the RG zone is 35 feet. So really, regardless of whether or not we are putting up an apartment building on the lot in the back or putting up a self-storage facility or any other use allowable within the RG or CG zone, we have the ability to go to 35 feet. That's permitted within the zoning ordinances. So we're not asking for any variances to do anything more than what's already allowable within both the RG and the CG. The current height of the fire station, as a point of reference, is 28 feet. And that fire station is also built outside of the regs, right up against the property line on McGuire. It does not follow the standard setbacks that are required by the town within that zone of 25 feet, excuse me. The new 35-foot structure is also positioned significantly further away from McGuire than the fire station. We're well over 100 feet from the opposite side of McGuire, whereas the fire station is less than 50 feet. And when you think about that, if you were to walk up to a 35-foot building and stare straight up at it, it appears much taller. If you take 100 steps back, it's not as tall or burdening. Neighboring views from McGuire Road and Bourne Avenue. So this is obviously a new development. And when we put a new development together, we're looking at what's required for setbacks, buffering areas, and landscaping. So one of the items which, when I take a break here, I'll log back in. But one of the items that's important to keep in mind is that right now you have no landscaping on that site at all. What we're proposing are brand new sidewalks going down McGuire. So you would have curb, sidewalk, and then approximately 20 feet of landscaping or more, okay, to the internal curb line. So, going down McGuire, instead of just seeing asphalt and building, we're now going to have green space, plantings. The landscape architect is not complete with it yet, but that's all going to be designed to create buffering along McGuire and then down Bourne Avenue. So we're looking at eliminating the direct impacts of the development, whether it's the coffee shop or the restaurant or the back of the storage building. The idea is to kind of beautify that entire corner of the road there. One of the things that I think is also important is that what we're planning on doing is installing curb where there is not presently curb along McGuire. And what that's going to do is eliminate some of the parking that's been taking place on McGuire. We did speak to a couple of town representatives, and it's our understanding that parking along that area has been a challenge. So this is going to establish and maintain the 30-foot traveled way, which is important for traffic. But instead of having no curb where you could drive in and out of that parking lot from halfway down McGuire all the way down to Bourne, we're going to specifically identify that curb line, have the landscaping, and eliminate any unwanted parking or overnight parking that might be considered intrusive. So if you give me 2 minutes, I can get this all back up. One of the other items that's come up are traffic impacts. So as a function of putting development like this together, we are required to do a professional traffic study. One of the things that's changed as a result of hearing from the planning board during our master plan approval is we've made modifications to our master plan. Those modifications include eliminating the drive-through exit onto McGuire, as well as changing the two-way in and out entryway and exit off of Mineral Spring Avenue to a single in and a single out. Unfortunately, that requires us to go back to the traffic consultant, and it engages an entirely new process. It may not seem like a significant change, but the traffic consultants are required to go back and rework the entire flow. It's a positive. It's reducing the impacts to the neighborhood. What we have today is the draft copy that was designed against the original master plan. But like I said, seeing as we've changed it, it's going to have impacts. So it's not perfectly accurate, but when I go through and read exactly what the results were, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised that the impact from a traffic perspective is quote unquote negligible from a professional traffic consulting perspective. Okay, bear with me. And I apologize for the technical difficulties. Ralph, I should be getting back in here in a second.
Okay, I'll be looking for you.
Thank you. And we're back. All right, let's skip ahead here. These are some of the photos that we got cut out at. So this is now Bourne looking towards McGuire, back of the fire station. This is that small impound section. I think the other thing that's important here, only because it's come up in the public meetings, are the road abandonments. If you look at these parking spaces on the lower right photo, the actual property line is at the front of those parking spaces where the cars are pulled in forward there. And the property line actually cuts through the curb radiuses that you can see there, the actual property line. So what we're proposing is we're going to move that property line and we're going to turn that all into green space and remove that curb and remove all that asphalt. So it turns into landscaping. Okay, I went through briefly the approved master plan. This is the augmented master plan. The approved master plan, if you remember, had the exit off the drive-through, as well as the entryway, as well as the, we had an island going right through the middle of the property, isolating the front of the property from the back of the property, which meant that anybody that wanted to access the storage facility had to go through the access on McGuire. So what we've done is we've eliminated that. So if somebody wants to pull into the site and access the storage facility, they can do it off of Mineral Spring Avenue. This is just going through the neighborhood comments that I had mentioned earlier. And we are now at the traffic impacts on the new development. So reduced curb cuts on McGuire. Right now you have curb that runs about halfway down McGuire, and then it's open season. You know, there's just asphalt that leads up to the edge of the traveled way, and you can pull in and out, and that's that it's kind of been run for years with the safety complex. We're going to be closing that all in. That's all going to be brand new curb. We eliminated the drive-through exit. The professional traffic study interim results have demonstrated the impacts will be minimal for this development. Since this time, the interim results, as I mentioned, we have reduced the curb cuts on McGuire, so the impacts are actually going to get worse on, or I'm sorry, are going to be lightened on the side streets. And self-storage, which we'll get to kind of at the end, there's been some misconception as to whether or not self-storage is a high traffic producer. It is nowhere near a high traffic producer. There's national data that refutes any of that. And we actually had Life Storage run some traffic impact studies on 3 of their stores. And we have those down below, and you're looking at, on average, I think it's 22 or 28 combined visits. So entering and exiting. And whether that sounds like a lot or not, from a professional traffic perspective, it's not. That's per day. It's very, 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 very minimal. And it's also important to note that the former safety complex would have had substantially greater traffic counts and substantially greater traffic impacts on all the side roads in the area. Pedestrian safety. This is something that was brought up at one of the meetings. Again, you have no sidewalk that runs up and down McGuire to get to the back neighborhoods. We will be installing brand new sidewalks along Mineral Spring Avenue adjacent to the property, as well as brand new sidewalks down to the intersection of Bourne and McGuire. Evening light pollution. The lighting that's on site now is kind of a mixed bag. None of it's dark sky compliant. All the new lighting that we install is all dark sky compliant. What that means is that from a certain degree angle, you're not going to be impacted from the site lighting. it doesn't like these lights here would not be dark sky because you can see the bulb and it directly impacts your line of vision. All the dark sky lighting that we install comes down and it doesn't, it's intended to keep the light on site and also not pollute the sky with additional light. Now I know it's Mineral Spring Avenue and it's well lit all night long, but the idea is to keep the light on the parcel, not leaving the parcel, impacting the neighbors. Self-storage hours of operation. When we go into any of these meetings, you know, the ideal, you know, working parameters is 24 hours, right? Because then we can have any hours of operation that we want. We appreciate that that's not desirable here. We called up Life Storage, who's our operator, had a conversation with them, and they're totally fine doing a 6 a.m. to 11:30 or even a 10 p.m. So you're not going to have any access to the building at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, or anything like that. It's they don't view it as in any of their 24-hour stores. It's not something that they really see a high demand for. So there's no problem working that right in where the hours of operation will be more normal business hours. So one of the big misconceptions about self-storage is the building. If you look in and around the area, specifically Bourne, east and looking at some of the apartment buildings in the area, this building, and we'll get to the renderings and some of the examples, these buildings are no longer, courtesy of Shane, big orange metal boxes. There's a number of articles written that specifically identify why they used to be that way. Why, if you're familiar with Boston, you'd come down 93 and there'd be this big facility with a massive inflatable turnstile lock on it. That's all gone by the wayside. The building right on 95, the U-Haul storage near Narragansett Improvement, you know, right down by the port, those types of buildings you don't see those pop up anymore. These big orange buildings that exemplify security and safety and, you know, just big metal imposing structures. That's not what they are anymore. The primary reason for that is that these buildings are moving outside. They're moving away from industrial areas. Right? These buildings are moving into commercial areas and closer and closer and closer to residential areas. The reason for that is use. Now, we hear it all the time that, well, residents aren't going to use self-storage. Well, I appreciate that, but this is specifically what they are used for. And they are built across the country in these areas directly adjacent to residential areas because they're a service to the public. It's a fact. It's irrefutable. We're going to show you actually a cluster of storage facilities in Johnston and a new one that's going up. And it's sort of an extreme example. It's a real example, but it makes the point very, very clearly as it relates to commercial zoned areas and residential zoned areas and the utility of self-storage. As far as the buildings go, because they've migrated outside of these industrial areas, they no longer can be these big, ugly metal boxes, right? So now we're looking at stone veneers, brick veneers, metal siding, horizontal metal siding. We're looking at industrial structural steel looking awnings that tear up over the stories, window walls. It's an entirely different thing. They're designed to improve the architectural aesthetic of the neighborhood, not diminish it. The orientation of the restaurant and the bank. So right now, and I think we've mentioned this before, we don't have tenants lined up. We don't have a bank, we don't have a coffee shop, and we don't have a restaurant that are presently lined up for those building pads, okay? But when we come before the planning board, we have to present something. So as developers, we looked at what tenant demand is out there. And we figured that having these as placeholders would be suitable and we'd be able to generate interest. We understand and appreciate that we may not find a coffee shop tenant, we may not find a restaurant, we may not find a bank. And we may very well have to come back in front of the planning board to reassess the front of the site when we find tenants that are interested in it that would be acceptable to the town. So for right now, while I appreciate the concern about the restaurant and the bank, and it's not entirely unfeasible that they be swapped, that's an engineering and fairly substantial financial lift to re-engineer that now. And because we don't have tenants lined up for it, I just want you to rest assured that We don't have another Dunkin' Donuts like Mineral Spring needs one. We don't have another Dunkin' Donuts. We don't have a McDonald's that would just be across the street from the other or anything like that presently lined up. When we have tenants and our real estate brokers have essentially let us know that, once we have the ability to take the buildings down, we break ground, we create building pads, the site becomes much more marketable. Once we have identified potential tenants, maybe they slot into those locations. Maybe we need to swap. Maybe we need to redesign the front. That's just kind of where we are for right now. But I want you to appreciate that the concern, especially as it relates to, I think it was rodent infestation, right? We hear you. We're not looking to exacerbate that problem. So elevations are kind of important here. This is something that's come up a number of times. So we kind of just want to set the record straight. This is the reality. The fire station is 28 feet tall and it's right at the property line of McGuire. That's what it is. The building, the residential building directly behind the parcel, okay? That's the top of that roof is it's first of all, it's a 3-story building. The elevation is at 219 and the intersection of Bourne and McGuire is at elevation 183. Right? Going up Bourne, you run into a 4-story building with a max elevation of 241. And then further up the street, you have a 5-story building with a max elevation of 273. While 35 feet and 3 stories can appear imposing, I just think it's important to note that we haven't proposed anything that isn't acceptable within the CG zone or the RG zone. The apartment buildings that are directly behind here are 3-story buildings. So as far as fitting into the construction and the neighborhood and what's been built in the area, we specifically didn't ask for anything taller. As an aside, we helped construct the extra space on 95. That's a 5 or 6-story building. We didn't look to go down that road here. We wanted to keep everything within the height limitations of both current zones. So this is the example in Johnston. And this one is, we know a lot about this one. So the blue is commercial, the pink is residential, and the little purple, that's also that's R7, that's residential. If you look at the middle note on the right-hand side, and you'll kind of see hazed over as a very square box, that is a brand new CubeSmart. We performed the site and concrete package for that building. Okay. Directly to the left of that, the long, narrow, nope, one more, go back to the right, Paul. That's an extra space. All right. The argument's been made to us that we don't need more self-storage. All right. And I can appreciate that. However, the empirical data proves otherwise. Directly to the left of that is a brand new public storage, okay, that is the same size as the CubeSmart building. And that is breaking ground. I have the contract on my desk and I think we're starting that one in March of 22, so next month. So as far as the need and the demand, we didn't just pull this out of thin air. There are reports that are run by our operators that run self-storage nationwide, and they determine whether or not there is a meaningful demand in the neighborhood. That's based on demographics. It's based on type of structures, the type of dwelling structures, multifamily, single family, et cetera. Okay. And it's based on national data that they acquire themselves because they are operators of over 1,000 facilities nationwide. And it addresses the existing asset, square footage, and inventory and square footage that's in the area. So they look at how much self-storage exists today. What would the potential demand be based on all the empirical data that we have that we collect? Is there a need for more? And they pump out a number and they tell us this works or it does not work. If it doesn't work, we move on. We come up with something else. The other thing that's very interesting about this is you have commercial directly against residential. You have 3 storage facilities that share almost sequential addresses. All right. And they're there for a reason because they provide a service to the residents. In the same way, Shane and I had a conversation the last time we were here, and he said, consider a health facility. Sure. And we can run the numbers on that. However, like a health facility provides a service to the neighborhood, right? People don't get in their car and travel an hour to go to the gym. They want to travel 5 minutes and go to the gym. The gym needs to be somewhere near their home, right? Because they're providing a service to the neighborhood. Connotations and impressions of self-storage completely aside, what does self-storage do? It provides storage space for people that don't have it in their home, or they live in multifamily structures and they don't have it in their apartment. They want to rent a space so they can keep their things. That's what it does. Taking that into consideration, service a gym for a service storage, I think you can appreciate why they've migrated towards residential areas. So this is an example that's literally the town over. And I wanted you to see this because you have a town next to you that is promoting self-storage adjacent to residential. They're good-looking buildings. The public storage one personally, I think, is more attractive than what the CubeSmart turned out as. And they're right there. And actually, not that you can see this, but where the public storage is going to go, that's a split zone lot. That's why I just think it perfectly applies to what we're doing here. So here are some project renderings. We're not professional renders. I'm not an artist. These took a while. We did these in-house. So this is McGuire Mineral. That's the coffee shop. If it looks at all familiar, it is identical to the architectural details of the new Starbucks that went in down by the Warwick Mall. This would be a view from McGuire looking towards the proposed self-storage facility. Again, we're going to get to some real life storage buildings, but this is as good as we could do, just so you could get an idea of what it would look like. Here you can see we have the sidewalk going all the way down. You have the single entryway on and off of McGuire. There's no drive-through emergency exit. We've got landscape buffering. Again, to the best of our ability, we're trying to show the landscape buffering. We're not professional digital artists. This is now looking from the intersection of Bourne and McGuire back towards Mineral Spring. That fence there is our dumpster enclosure. So in case you're wondering what that is. The distance from the curb, just to kind of weigh it out for you, you've got the curb, you've got about 5 feet of sidewalk, 20 feet of landscaping, 18 feet of parking space, another 24 feet of dual lane travelway, and then about 6 feet to the balance of the building. Okay, this is Mineral Spring looking east. One of the things that Starbucks started to do is they put patios outside so people can grab their coffee and kind of sit outside. That's what you see there. And again, there's significant additional landscaping along Mineral Spring. I know that's not the real area of concern here, but if you go up and down Mineral Spring, you don't see a lot of landscaping adjacent to the road. This is going to change that a little bit. This is the bank building. It's kind of the site from the front. Again, looking east along Mineral. And there's the bank building from the interior. This is an actual life storage building. Okay. And I tried to pick a number of different examples. As we go through, you're going to see some are boxy and very modern. Some are more, I'd say, Southwestern looking, but you can get an idea that they're not these big, ugly metal boxes anymore. So that's one of them. This I'd say is a little more Southwestern. Again, metal, boxy, but in my opinion, relatively attractive. I like it personally. Not what we're proposing here. Say again? More contemporary. Same thing here. This one's more of a metal box. This we put on as the last example because it's kind of consistent, in my opinion, with the way we laid out the building that's proposed. This one's a little bit larger, but it has the entryway kind of where we're showing the entryway. It has some similar architectural details. Again, none of it's set in stone, but this is just to kind of wrap your arms around what this could look like. Okay, traffic study highlights.
Excuse me, do you have pictures to take photos of the first few that you took?
The first few, I don't, but we can certainly supply it. We can supply it. Yeah, we can do that.
We get your name and address. before we leave
Yeah.
tonight.
Well, just to be clear, we don't know what it's gonna look like yet. So you really can't give a picture of exactly what it's gonna look like, correct?
But we can supply the one with pictures.
With what you had here,
of
but,
examples of what you have.
okay.
Yes.
Examples,
And obviously, there's a motivation by the to make the building look
aesthetically pleasing.
pleasing. to all of us.
I got you.
So this is traffic study mod 1. All right, and the reason I'm calling it mod 1 is because this traffic study is based on a site layout that has since been enhanced to reduce traffic impacts to the side streets. But the total new trips, well, actually, let me read this quote. This is directly from the report. Proposed mixed-use development is projected to have a negligible impact on the operations of the study area intersections. Those intersections are Bourne and McGuire, McGuire and Mineral, Sunset, and Sunset and Bourne, and Sunset and Mineral Spring Avenue. So professional traffic study, augmentation is coming, the work's been done, and the impacts are negligible. Total new trips, and I want you to hold these numbers for a second because there's a caveat to them. Total new trips during the morning hours, and these are entering and exiting combined, 89. Total new trips in the afternoon, 108. All right. The total trips per parking space over the course of a day are 2.89. I know that seems like a stupid number, but 2.89. It's important to note that the existing conditions and existing traffic counts were taken October 14th of 2021, not when the former safety complex was still in operation at that location. If you extrapolate out the number of parking spaces and then take a third of them away from the existing facility, and you apply 2.89 trips per day for those parking spaces, not including the impound, not including, any kind of exterior ambulance parking or any of those types of spaces, just pedestrian and police vehicle parking spaces, no garages, no fire trucks, no ambulances. You end up with 289 trips per day via the former facility. Because everybody that lives along McGuire can appreciate that when that facility was active, decent amount of traffic, right? From the town, from the municipal offices, health and safety, right? I mean, it had to have been, and 24 hours a day, and lights and potential sirens, correct? We're well below that. So while this says essentially 197 total new trips, if you were to compare it to these trips for this development against what the traffic counts and existing conditions would have been for the former health and safety complex, we are reducing the traffic impact on the area. Okay. So this next slide, I guess it's hard to read. Let me just tell you. So essentially, this is 3 stores, weighted averages, and the expanded rounding of all the numbers you see there over the course of a complete month demonstrate the total visits. The bottom number all the way on the left-hand side is 28, and then it breaks the trips down 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and then in this case, 6 p.m. to 12 midnight. So you had 28 total, 3 were in the morning, 20 were midday, and 5 were at night per day for these types of facilities. Similar size, similar type demographic and area. So the conclusion that we have a complete new development proposed for the area. Right now, we're looking at an abandoned facility, an abandoned parking lot, abandoned building. All right, brand new construction, brand new landscaping, high quality finishes. All right, negligible traffic impacts from the professional traffic engineer. Paul just made the comment to Councilman McCullough. We have zero desire to try to do something or build a building, create a development that is at odds with the neighborhood. That's not our desire. We don't have any desire to build a big metal box. It doesn't serve our benefit, doesn't serve your benefit. We didn't have to agree to have this meeting in this type of a format. We could have very easily just kind of knocked on doors along McGuire, invited people out to the site and had sort of an informal conversation, which I know happens up and down Mineral Spring with developers. We have nothing to hide. We are here to answer your questions. We are here to try to collaborate as best as possible with the community, with the town, and take ourselves into consideration as the purchasers and developers, which from my perspective, I think is fair. the way I look at it is any of these types of developments need to be a compromise. So we want to push the building back as far as we can. And one of the things we could potentially propose is some easement from the setback along the west side near the property that the state owns. Might be able to push that building even further back. Okay, and we're willing to have that conversation with the town council and potentially propose it. We're willing to take the steps to try to support the concerns of the neighborhood. We appreciate there could be additional concerns, and we're happy to try and answer them. What our goal was when we first set out on this process, called up Mike Jatari of MG Commercial, saw the sign out on McGuire, inquired about the property, was to create a development that would be a win for the town, a win for the neighborhood, and a win for Douglas Construction. That's it. And I'm not saying it, a win for the town, sell some property, get some tax revenue, kind of a win for the neighborhood, whatever, we'll pull one over on them. And then Douglas Construction will make out like bandits, right? That's not what we're here to do, right? We're here to listen to what you've had to say. If there's additional comments and concerns, we will do our best to address them. We're not looking to ram a development down the community's throat. That's not what we're looking to do. So we believe that we've proposed something that has strong merit financially for the town, a good redevelopment for that parcel, brings a service in the self-storage aspect to a demographic in a neighborhood that has statistically been proven to need it, regardless of whether or not you may think you do, or you're going to use it, or your neighbors are going to use it. The reality is that the statistics demonstrate that there is not enough inventory and there is a high demand. That's the reality. We think, and we do think, full disclosure, that it is a good project for Douglas Construction. The only other thing that I think we could bring up, which is not included in this PowerPoint, is, again, kind of going back to who Douglas Construction is, who we are. We have the ability at a later date, if it's required, we can demonstrate what our construction capabilities are. We can show you examples of office space build outs. We can show you examples of ground up construction that we've done. We can give you a list of the self-storage facilities that we've been involved in the development and construction of. I don't know if anybody in here has been involved in the development or construction of a self-storage facility. We have. We've done it. We know something about it. We wouldn't be proposing it if we thought it was bad for the neighborhood. If it was bad for the neighborhood, it would be bad for the property that we're looking to acquire. We're not looking to build this on a piece of property that the town is going to own. We're going to own it. Why would we want nefarious activity? Why would we want a homeless problem? Why would we want to propose something, okay, where there's meth labs being run out of it? Okay, that's not what we're looking to do. Not to mention, these facilities have more low voltage security camera, HID access than you or I would ever know what to do with. And as a point of interest, it's all collected. Shane, you take out a storage facility, they know exactly when you entered it, they see you on the cameras, and they know when you left, and they know how often you went there. And they actually flag repeat activity. If people were running businesses or doing things inside of a self-storage facility that's beyond what the storage facility is intended for, that'd be in violation of zoning, right? So the idea is that that would be shut down. And that's the way that these facilities operate. So generally, in conclusion, we're here to try to work with you. We're here to try to work with the town. We want this to be a good development for the town. We want the town to be able to call the Valley Breeze and say, look at what we did. Look at the landscaping, look at the buildings, look at the architecture, look at the construction. We want to be able to have a successful project, and we don't want it to be something that the neighborhood looks back on and says, man, look at what I'm staring at now. That is not the goal. So with that, I'm going to shut up and we can, I guess, see if there's any questions. The one thing that Mary did request is that if anybody wants to ask a question, to approach the podium, state your name and address, and then to sign in. So I'll make that announcement for her. But thank you, everybody, for coming. I know it may seem like a false thank you. We do appreciate your participation and we do appreciate your concern and we want to hear what you have to say. And if there's any other feedback that you have, do not be afraid to share it. And we will do everything in our power to take as much of it into consideration as. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions?
Does anyone have any questions over here?
Anybody want to make a statement?
Jane?
I'm going to assume that, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say assume. Everyone here tonight, we may be talking about the same thing, so Shane kind of covers a lot of points, which I know a lot of you read the breeze. I've talked to a lot of you personally, and I'm assuming it's the same sentiment of, just about the whole room. But if there's not, please raise your hand and want to speak for it, please come up. And after that, so at least we can have a little bit of discussion. And if everybody wants to catch the PC game before it tips off, we'll try and make that happen. So, go ahead.
Good evening, Shane Pichet, Robert Drive. I'll keep this brief, as I was brought up a couple of times during the presentation. First, I'd like to thank the applicant for giving us this opportunity in this forum. Couple of things I want to point out and play the other side. I did pass this out if anyone did get it. And I know that the applicant here touched base on a few things. However, the first thing I would start off with is again, it's easy to stand up here and say how great of a development it is when you don't live next to it, okay? Or you don't have the, and also you're going to benefit from the financial impact, which, as anyone knows me, I'm all for business. However, a few things. This article that I presented this evening, it's about 5 days old, so this is something that's very relevant, and it touches many points that I know that the applicant tried to refute, but I want to just, he talked about facts. Let's talk about facts. In this article, this is from New Jersey. This is February 10th. And it starts off, last month, Robert Bruce, 64, from Red Bank, was found dead in self-storage unit where he was living. His death was a casualty of the pandemic, which has created a dire housing instability, pushing many to extreme measures for shelter. Obviously, it's no secret, the last 2.5 years have been trying on a lot of people. It's no coincidence, by the way, that these storage facilities are popping up like the gentleman showed us here next door in Johnston. Okay, couple of things he pointed out, but I want to point out again. These types of facilities used to be located along highways or industrial zones. The new ones are inching ever closer to residential areas, even covered in lakefront property, leaving many to worry about the sudden demand. In 1984, there were 6,600 self-storage buildings in the nation. 1984. Now there are over 55,000. It says in here, and I won't read it verbatim, but it essentially says why. Is it because Americans have more junk? They need more space. They have more belongings. It says that the average resident needs about 5.7 square feet of additional storage space. That's obviously not a huge amount. But as this article states, as well as the gentleman who's proposing this, industry insiders aren't keeping any secrets about the relationships between hard economic times and the self-storage industry. Investors brag self-storage is recession resilient, and that they are in the business of transition and trauma. So my point is, let's face it, what do people need self-storage for? They're coming upon hard times. Okay, maybe it's an economic issue, it could be divorce, it could be many different things. But again, I haven't found any articles to brag about how great a self-storage facility is in your community. And what it says here is ultimately, this is the dilemma. Are self-storage companies providing a crucial service to people in tough times, like selling umbrellas in a rainstorm? Or are they profiting off of poverty? And again, it goes on to talk about corpses that are found in countless self-storage facilities around the country due to the fact that they're using them as inexpensive shelter or the potential, like we talked about, of different drugs and nefarious activity. Now, I know that he said in today's world that that's not as common. However, this article is 5 days old, and this is talking about CubeSmart, and this is talking about all these life storage units that are popping up all over. This is not from 20 or 30 years ago. This is about what's happening in the world today. And there's a gentleman, if anyone wants to care to look him up, Joe Mazuka. He is the CEO of Meth Lab Cleanup. Okay, and he discusses about how multiple units a month across the country that they go into and clean this up. Again, happens nationwide, right over the line in Massachusetts. There's plenty of information regarding of how this is happening as we speak. We can go through this entire thing. Everyone has it. I don't want to beat it. I think everyone gets the point. But I will say that there's one thing that I want to bring up in front of this board. Lawmakers are limiting or banning outright the construction of new ones. They point to the design of the facilities, the windowless facades, the bright colors. I know the gentleman showed us some photos. He said they look nice. Personally, I like something with a little more character, but that's, again, just my personal opinion. But here's what's one of the last points I want to say that they put in this article. Self-storage facilities like dollar stores, do they both offer a cheap product to people facing hardship, but at what cost to the community at large? I will say this is a 40,000 square foot building being proposed at 3 stories. It will provide nothing in terms of economic impact for the town, meaning it will not provide any significant jobs for a 40,000 square foot facility. There's a proposal for across the street for a neon gas station market, as well as a charging station. That particular business employs on an average day about 30 to 40 people throughout the day. This 40,000 square foot facility may employ at best 2, specifically if they don't have the overnight hours. Because again, it is automated. It is profitable. From a business standpoint, I completely understand where the applicant's coming from. But from a community standpoint, we are doing a major disservice to the future of this town by allowing this major resource, very limited in what we have in space. Johnston's 21 something square miles. They might have room to go and build these. There's no way that we can allow a development like this to come in and we're stuck with this albatross for the next whoever knows how long. Because we may not be here to see it, but our kids and our grandkids have to live with the decisions we make. And if you look around, I haven't met one person aside from an owner of one that's a proponent of this development and said the great impact it had on their community. I appreciate your time for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm sure that there's other people that may have some other sentiments, so I want to keep it short, and I do want to see PC move up the rankings tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shane. Anyone else? Anyone else? Go ahead, sir. Please state your name for the record.
Hello, Tony Powell, Robert Drive. Thank you guys from Douglas Slumber for your hard work and your presentation. It's appreciated. I don't know if I heard a compelling why. I wasn't sold. And I don't know if anyone in North Providence will say, yes, a self-storage area on Mineral Spring. Coffee shop, yes. Bank, but it seems like the coffee shop and the bank was an afterthought as to, we're still waiting on someone to step up. Almost like no matter what we do, if we put lipstick on this thing, it's still what it is. Metal containers. And cities throughout, research is clear that cities throughout our country have banned the development of self-storage units in residential communities. I haven't heard any positive impact on the community as far as morale, providing jobs, income, building families. I hear the self-storage won't create that much traffic, which I appreciate. But what I really appreciate is the traffic, because that means people are living, people are spending money, and people are growing. I don't mind the traffic. They don't have a coffee shop. They don't have an owner to step up to a coffee shop or a restaurant or a bank, which is really an afterthought. I wanted to hear, we're gonna have the best coffee in town. That's what I wanted to hear. Does the town, almost as a rhetorical question, I guess, does the town have a barometer for businesses on Mineral Spring? Because this is true. It's a win for Douglas Company, Lumber. It's a win for Douglas Construction. And it is a win for the town for the tax revenue. But I see very little of a win for the actual people who live in the town of North Providence.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Can you please, can you please come up to the microphone, please? Take your time.
Mike. Should we just bring the
Why
microphone?
don't you just stay right there?
I wish we could have brought the microphone to her.
Just-
Actually, that cord might have been long enough, but.
Just tell her to state her name.
When you come up, can you please state your name?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, Matera. I live at the housing right next door to the fire station.
Okay,
And people are saying, like, a lot of us said, why can't we get a market put there? Because right now, everybody either has to go down the shores or stop and shop and has to rely on buses. And people are saying it'd be maybe a good idea if we can get a market put there and make it a lot easier for people who live in those buildings that have to rely on buses to get to the store. And a lot of us, we have to drive a lot of the other people to the stores because they can't get around. And a lot of people said maybe it'd be a good idea to put a market there instead of a storage unit, because we think it'll put the neighborhood down. And there's gonna be more traffic, I think. As it is, it's hard to get in and out of the side street over there. You gotta go out to CVS and come out at the light. Well, I guess so. I feel bringing that up.
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Mhm. Anyone else?
Please state your name.
Live on McGuire Road.
I'm sorry, George.
Ledger. How you guys doing? Again, you guys, I've been up here multiple times. Again, the storage building, what's it gonna benefit the residents? What's it gonna do to the value of the property? Nobody answers that. I have a few things working for realtors that's gonna give me a thing of property valuation, that what is value now, what would happen if a building goes there, a storage building that size would, you know, I'm sure the tax rate wouldn't go down on the property, on my house. So again, what's it benefit us? The fire station, when it was there, it benefits. Knock on wood, I didn't have to use them, but they were there. Same thing with the police department. Yeah, there was a lot of traffic getting out of there. We didn't, they respected us. I mean, they get calls, yeah, they go, but they respected the neighborhood. So that's how I feel. I've said this multiple times at every meeting, so I don't want to take up any of your time. You guys want to go watch the basketball? That's cool.
No, I was just joking with that. We're gonna stay here as long as we have to.
And I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Have a good night, guys. Thanks.
Anyone else? This is on McGuire Road. It's over.
Good evening, Terry Gorder and Dennis Gorder. Great presentation. I don't know how many of you would be excited that that's what your views. I'm just, I can't love it. The green space, oh, absolutely. But the building, to wake up every day and that be what it is. Again, the value of our properties are gonna go down. I get we need to build something there. We need to have something there, but I can't love the storage facility. I just.
You know, I mean, I agree the storage facility is not ideal. You know, I do want to thank them for the presentation. However, a few things I think they dropped the ball on. One is they didn't provide any pictures of prior projects. You mentioned them, but you didn't show any. You showed us some storage facilities that were close to a residential area, but you didn't show us what it looked like. You showed us blocks, two-dimensional view of it, but you didn't say that, oh, here is the view from the people across the street, here's the view down the road. I think those would have been good things to sell. The other thing is you still do not have a vision for this building. I mean, you showed us, you know, you said you built something there, you built some, you showed some examples of other properties. Again, what would make you pick one over the other? I mean, what's your vision? What, I mean, it's been 4 months and I don't see anything that sells it for us, or at least for me. I know George mentioned the traffic, that we did have. I mean, that's the other thing to keep in mind is that they were public servants. Now it's just going to be locals and people coming in. It's, they are not going to respect the roads, the property like our police and fire department did. Also, I mean, I look at a lot of these other facilities that I've seen pictures of that are near some residential areas. You see graffiti all over them. You see them unkept. You see the property, just kind of just it's, so there's those concerns too. It's like, what's going to be the upkeep? Is there going to be that upkeep that's going to be there? So, I mean, I've you talk about 3 stories, you talk about the size of the commercial or the fire station today versus this is going to be 35 feet or whatever you'd indicated. Again, it's going to be a block, the pictures that you showed, the renderings that you show that you put together showing what you in the restaurant, the bank and all this. They look really, really modern, but they don't look like they fit along a residential area or even along Mineral Spring. I mean, do you see any other buildings that look like any of those? I think those are things we just need to keep in mind. Oh, and the other thing, the slip up with the times. I mean, first it was going to be 6 to 10, then it was 24 hours, then it was 6 to 11, and now it's 6 to 10 again. Again, we need to nail down those times because they're just making it's not giving me any. So that's all I really have right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, sir. Please state your name for the record.
And my name is Vin Tomasi. I live on 220 Central Avenue. Central Avenue runs adjacent parallel with McGuire, and I'll make it short. I'm just here to kind of support my neighbors that live on Metcalf. And I don't want them to look out their window and see something unsightly. The fire station's been there for years. I don't want them to look at another brick building. The pictures that the gentleman showed look nice. They looked appealing. That's kind of why I'm here. I just didn't want an eyesore in front of them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Would you like to answer some of those questions that were just brought up?
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer what I can answer. I haven't traveled to Newark and visited storage facilities in Newark. Newark is not North Providence, but I'm not down there. Exactly. And I don't think that that's the intention here. So
That article also stated, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I got to interject where I got to interject. Some of them were in Massachusetts. Some of them were closer than Newark, New Jersey. So, if you do read the article, I know he pointed out one, but I did read it myself. So we have it right across in Massachusetts, so it's not that far away.
that's fine. I mean, the article was given me just today. So I mean, I haven't had an opportunity to read it. But I did write down the point, Shane, that you brought up. I mean, yeah, I mean, that would be terrible to find somebody deceased inside of a storage facility. I mean, I don't think anybody wants that. I mean, we would not want that. As far as so let me just back up a second. This is a 35-page PowerPoint presentation. It took 50 minutes to run through tonight. You made the comment We didn't show you any examples of what we've actually built. I mean, I could have added more slides and more slides and more slides, but at a certain point, you kind of have to just say, I'm going to hit what I think we need to hit. There's a lot more information that we could certainly share with you. We did what we thought we needed to do tonight to sort of concerns were. The concerns were big traffic impacts. Now the concerns are, well, there might not be enough traffic. I mean, we can only respond to the concerns as they've been presented to us in previous meetings, and that's what we're trying to do. So I do think it's important to back up a little bit, and let's talk about Mineral Spring Avenue. Let's talk about the current construction on Mineral Spring Avenue, the buildings that are on Mineral Spring Avenue. You talk about, have you seen any buildings along Mineral Spring Avenue that look like the ones we're proposing? Predominantly, no. But if you look at the new construction on Mineral Spring Avenue, yes. Providence Bagel and the Wendy's down on the other side of Douglas Pike are very contemporary looking buildings. Very contemporary looking buildings. I haven't been by the renovation of the Burger King into the Popeyes. I know that's open now. I haven't been by it yet. But I'd be curious to see what that looks like. When we approached the town about purchasing this property, before a P&S was even considered, it was made very, very, very clear to us that the town was looking for something different, not the standard 5-unit strip mall, small retail buildings. They were looking for something different. So instead of having diagonally across the street, there's a development that's complete now that's almost fully leased up. And it is the same thing that you see up and down Mineral Spring Avenue. It is a long building with multiple units. That is a good business move, right? It's efficient. It's efficient. It's a single structure. It's multiple tenants. If you had to put 5 tenants into 5 separate structures and 5 separate foundations, you're blowing your budget out of the water. That was not the desire. Again, before we even talked about price, before we ever talked about what the P&S could look like, it was, what are you guys thinking? And we agreed that Mineral Spring could do for something different, standalone buildings and something different. So the architectural items that you've seen, the renderings that you've seen, they're based on something that's a little bit more contemporary and something that's different. It's not the same old thing along Mineral Spring Avenue. That was by intent. And that was by collaboration between us in communication with the seller, the town. So while I appreciate everybody has different tastes, right? I'm not expecting everybody to like what we like or like what Life Storage likes. Somebody might love strip malls. That's fine. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but that's the reason why you're seeing what you're seeing. As far as what is it actually going to look like? Good question. There's a reason why it's hard to answer that question. We've been through master plan approval, okay? We have positive recommendation for the road abandonments from the planning board. We have positive recommendation on the zone change planning board. And until we go through this next step with the town council, we don't know if we have a project. At least we don't know if we have a project as it relates to what's presently been approved on a master plan level. If we don't have a project, releasing our architect who is teed up and ready to go, releasing our architect to start designing what the actual building would look like is a massive lift, work-wise and financially. Even just the work that's gone into what we've done so far from a civil engineering perspective is a big lift. And we're pressing it forward and we're trying to make those modifications and changes and redoing the traffic study and everything else. We're not at the point yet where we've been able to say, architect, go spend 6 figures and design this building. We're not there yet. Nobody in this room would go ahead and release that until you know that you have a project premised on the master plan that's been approved. So we're not trying to evade what is this going to look like. That's why we're trying to show you as many examples as we can. Coincidentally, and maybe you're right, I probably could have put it in this presentation, but we did provide pictures of the CubeSmart that went up on 14 on Plainfield Pike within the package that the town council received for the last council meeting. So we did try to demonstrate some of that. And yes, miss on my part, I could have added that in here so you could have seen what that looked It's not far away. I'd recommend taking a drive by, and you'll probably also note that there might be maybe 2 cars in the parking lot any time of the day. Marketplace. We specifically went down that road. We went down that road. We actually have former conceptuals. We approached Dave's Market. We didn't approach Don Shores because there'd be a little bit of a conflict there. But we did approach Dave's Market, and then also MG Commercial, who again, we're working with. They did a Northern Rhode Island study for the town or city of Woonsocket. Woonsocket is a piece of property that we've actually already purchased, excuse me. We own a piece of property in Woonsocket that has been streamlining a self-storage facility. We're proposing a marketplace and some contractor units. Woonsocket commissioned a study to try to see if a marketplace could go there. MG Commercial did the study. And because we work with MG Commercial, we had access to that information for this site. And we reached out to a number of different, I mean, all the way to this site's a little small for it, but there's something now called a Walmart, neighborhood Walmart. It's a much smaller, and it's smaller Walmart, but it's geared towards the marketplace, the food, right? We did a lot of reaching out on that, and it was actually going to go against the Hertz building, and it was going to be built right into the embankment, and the parking was going to be on the McGuire side. That's the way we had kind of envisioned it at the front side of the site. So we did actually look at other options. As it relates to other options, one of the items that our planning consultant put forward in his review of the financial impacts of this to the town was the alternative based on what is presently allowable in the back of the property from a zoning perspective. Let me start by saying we appreciate that different people for different reasons may have opposition to self-storage. We get that. Posing it as it relates to the architectural details or the size of the building, I appreciate that as well. However, we would have the ability to come in, and we did look at it, and we've actually kind of sketched out and designed it and gone 3 stories. We could put 100 units back there. Another large multi-residential structure that would go, I mean, it would come closer to McGuire the way we ended up having to lay it out. It would go all the way to where the building is now up against Bourne forward. And then the front of the property would coincidentally or consequently need to be utilized all for parking because of the parking requirements for residential. It's an RG zone today. And that would be a permissible use that we could just go ahead and go forward with. We don't think that's the best use for the property. It would be probably the next best business decision, but I don't know that another 100+ cars and taking this piece of property, how many square miles is North Providence? 5.2. This is just over 3 acres of it. And taking this and putting another residential building there is necessarily the way to go. And I do think it's also important to note, we intend on purchasing the property. We're going to buy it. There is an arrangement, there is an agreement. I say arrangement, it's not a deal, it's not an arrangement, it is a purchase and sale agreement. And we are going through this process because we had the option to receive approvals prior to purchase. But it's not contingent on us to be able to proceed with the purchase. We have the ability to close. We could close and come back with a whole new plan and all new engineering for a multi-residential building in the back and do some, maybe if we can fit it, do some kind of commercial up front. I don't know that that is any kind of a noteworthy development for this parcel on Mineral Spring Avenue. To me, I would like to see the best coffee. That'd be great. Shane, we were already thinking Brewed Awakenings before you mentioned it the other night. I think that'd be phenomenal. Brewed Awakenings is a little bit of a bigger footprint than what we're showing, but maybe that goes where the bank is, open to it. I think that'd be great. That'd be a good fit for Mineral Spring Avenue. Something else on the restaurant side versus the fast food.
Self-storage facility has zero benefit in terms of yeah, maybe somebody uses storage, but in terms of present and future, there's no economic impact that benefits the town in terms of jobs. There's no traffic, as the gentleman behind me stated, to help any of the other surrounding businesses or anything else. There's no single thing that you can point to as a proponent of self-storage, other than the fact that it is a completely recession-proof business. It does benefit on hot economic times, which, again, the future show that it's no secret, the economy is going in a different direction than it was, say, 3 years ago. So we know that this is a major financial gain for someone who has them. That's why they're popping up like everywhere. But again, for our community, that whole 5.2 square miles community, to have 3 acres to do something with, that needs to benefit. That has to have a positive impact, as far as I'm concerned, and I think people in this room are concerned, on the entire community. By the way, that land is owned by the town, right? Who is the town? The taxpayer. Okay, so I appreciate the comment. However, it takes two to make a deal. So I would say that the deal that was proposed should have a lot of support. Can I ask a question? Anybody in the room today support this development? Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of it and support? Can I see a show of hands? Anybody here against this development? Can I see a show of hands that doesn't support? Anyone in the room not living in the town of Providence?
Stole my thunder.
How many people live in, what's the, surrounding property?
In the abutter area.
How many people live in the abutters?
How many people received?
This side of the room.
Okay, so these three people live in the abutters, and everybody else is here to support these folks, right?
No. Let me,
All right.
I know, but let me just state one thing too. There are people here that on the butters list and across, one lady's a nurse. I can go down and you have gentlemen, I can give you the whole list, but they happen to live right across the street. Are you sure?
I'm guessing.
Making sure.
So just, I'm just trying to get up here.
Let me ask. Would you want to look out your window at a storage, like three high storage building? While you're sitting in the living room where it has your kitchen sink.
Would you want to find out one day that when you look across the parking lot, you see this big building, and you see 15 cruisers in there because they found a dead body, or because they found a dead body, or because they found any of the one, show me the positive.
So before this devolves, all right, before it becomes uncivil, hold on. You're talking about a news article, correct?
Yeah.
Hold on a second, all right? Why don't we do it the appropriate way? Why don't we request, what is it, an APB? Why don't we request, okay, an emergency services call record for the last 10 years for Providence, Johnston, North Providence for the safe storage, what was the storage facility down by the Stop and Shop? That I can't recall what it's called. Why don't we request, and let's just see in the area, not an article that's talking about Massachusetts or New Jersey or somewhere that's not here. Let's just see.
So we're gonna
Because
wait till that
maybe-
becomes one of the towns in the article.
Say again?
We're gonna wait till that becomes one of the towns in the article for somebody else.
Listen, this is what I don't want to do. What I'm trying to do is.
No, listen, I
avoid-
gotta tell you something.
I'm a.
You've done a great presentation. I really do. I really wish I could vote for it for the presentation that you put on. I really hope I'm not speaking out of turn. If anybody else wants.
No, Mario wants.
Oh, Mario.
Councilman Martone, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, let me say I certainly appreciate this presentation. It's provided me with a lot of information that I didn't have previously. I also want to thank the people who showed up. Certainly, I think it's a great thing when we have engagement from our residents, and I think a healthy discourse is something that is good and that will ultimately, I hope, foster an outcome that I think everybody will end up being happy with. But I did have a few questions for Douglas Construction, if you don't mind. So one, and what I'll do is I'll go through the questions and then I think they're relatively quick, and then you can just kind of answer them. One is, with the self-storage unit, is is there someone there manning it at all times while you're open? And also when they're not open? So if it wasn't a 24-hour facility, would there be somebody there? How many people? Is there any kind of security presence? That kind of thing. My second question is specifically for your company. I know you said that you've done other projects, and I have to be honest, based on your presentation, I think you are a partner that certainly seems responsible and someone that I think North Providence would be lucky to have as a partner. But my question to you is, in your previous developments, how long do you keep them for? Are they, a couple of years, decades? Because one thing that I think is important when we're talking about this is, I think you certainly seem like a responsible group. But if you're going to build something and then turn around and sell it in a few years, then I think that kind of changes the calculus. So that's my second question. And my third question is, certainly it seems like you've done a lot of these, a lot of different projects, and you've had people give you some feedback with regard to a lot of different things. Have you or your company or hired anybody or talked to anybody that has given you any indication with regard to property values in the surrounding community, both commercial and residential, when you're talking about them being in close proximity to these self-storage units? Those are the questions that I have.
Thank you. So as far as the facility being staffed, it would be staffed during the hours of operation. Overnight, it would not be staffed, and there would be zero access to the facility. As far as security goes, these facilities commonly have interior camera systems that monitor all the hallways, elevator areas, as well as the entryways, as well as the exterior public access areas. This facility specifically is not going to have any exterior access to tenant spaces. So you'd have to be going through a common door into the facility, and all of the tenant spaces would be accessed internally. Whereas you'll see on a number of different locations, some that we've built, they have exterior roll-up doors. That's not this facility. This isn't designed that way. So I hope that answers the first question. As far as the second question goes, I don't have the same type of longevity that Paul does, but I'm going to go out on a limb and correct me if I'm wrong. Since you've been developing, have you sold a property? No. Has not sold a property since he's been developing. And he did have gray-white hair well before he should have it, but that just runs in the family. But he's been doing it for quite a while. And we own office, we own industrial, we're developing distribution warehousing, we're developing self-storage, we're developing retail. And to date, we have not resold a single property. So and to your point, that does matter, right? Because where you see a lot of these facilities going, they get sold to REITs. They get sold to real estate investment trusts, and you have some sort of a third party like Jones Lang LaSalle type property manager. And you still have the third party operator that's the custodian for it on a day in, day out basis. And that's also, by the way, one of the reasons we look to a Life Storage, not mom and pop storage, that doesn't have the experience. I mean, Life Storage is nothing to sniff at. Life Storage is a significant player in the industry. I mean, over 1,000 facilities across the United States under management. So as far as, are we going to build this and just flip it off? All I can say to that right now is that that's not the intent, nor is it in line with our current track record. As far as property values go, we did have a planning consultant go through and sort of identify the value of this property specifically. And in that report, I think in that report, it addresses the benefit to the surrounding neighborhood by virtue of taking the existing parcel today, okay, and enhancing it to something better than it is today. I don't know that it specifically addresses the self-storage use as it relates to property values. That I can't speak to. We could certainly do that due diligence and see if we can pull somebody in, a third-party expert, a commercial real estate consultant, or something along those lines. Happy to reach out.
Thank you. Thank you for those answers.
So listen, just to get back to it, right? I'm not here. I am not disrespectful enough, stupid enough, okay, or inconsiderate enough to sit here and expect that I'm going to come in and change all your opinions. In my opinion, that would be kind of an undermining exercise and undervaluing your opinions. Okay, I appreciate where you're coming from, but what I don't want to do is degrade this conversation into an argument based on opinion. Okay, because if it's not based in some kind of fact, then we're just going to start yelling back and forth at each other. And I don't know that that's productive in any form or fashion. So what I was getting at, sure.
This really isn't about money. It's about emotion. And most of us here have been born and raised and lived in North Providence our entire lives. So this is home.
Mhm.
I don't know where you live, but we take pride in this. And my family, entire family, maybe 5 different families, we all live in the same neighborhood. We love North Providence. This is who we are. This is our home. It's not about money. It's emotion. We just don't want this right now in our neighborhood.
And I appreciate that. And I'm not trying to make it about money either. What is important though, right, is there's concerns about what happens in these facilities, right? So what I was trying to get at earlier is why don't we source the information from the police departments? Why don't we see if in the area there are like police calls on any kind of a regular basis? Well, no, and maybe it's not. No, listen, but remember what I said. I'm not here. I'm not going to try to disrespectfully change your mind if your mind is made up, but at least be armed with the factual information. Okay, at least know that I reached out to the North Providence Police Department and I inquired as to what type of calls have occurred with respect to the storage facility behind the Stop and Shop. 1 call in 11 years. 1 call. All right. Right, and that goes 2 ways, right? So when they're in more remote areas, it's easier for things to happen. And they're gated, there's cameras, there's security. In an area where there's a lot more eyes, you would think that it would deter potential nefarious activity, right? Anyway, my point is, sure, the data is not just the data, right? There's caveats to it. We read anything and there's asterisks at the bottom of it all lined up. This is this, you got to read a couple paragraphs in super fine print font 1 to understand really what's in that number. So I get it. There are other things, but you have to start somewhere, right? And if you don't start with the police station to understand what's the reality in the area of police calls and emergency services required for storage facilities, I don't know. I think that's a good first call. So anyway, as far as the hours of operation go, in the first meeting, and I know you brought this up a couple of times, in the first meeting with the planning board, what I did say is that there are facilities that are 24 hours. I didn't know whether or not this one would be one. What we have discussed with Life Storage, if this project moves forward, is that it would be a 6 to 10. That's solid. All right.
You never did answer Julie's question regarding why he would have to live across from or tell us why you would like.
So I guess to be completely honest with you, I haven't given much thought to whether or not I would live across from a storage facility or not. Where have I lived though, right? Where have I decided to live? So I went to Providence College, right? I lived right down on Douglas. Okay, I've been in this area for a significant part of my life. I've lived in cities. I've lived in areas that are not necessarily, real great. I was living down on the east side of Providence until I decided to move to Warwick, and I had to move because there were shots fired right outside my house, a couple streets down from the governor's house. So I appreciate. No, you're right. I didn't, but Right, I don't think that I've said that. No, I have, no, right, and what I'm saying is I agree with you. I haven't said that it's. No. What I'm saying to you is I don't know that the excitement about living across from a self-storage facility is a factor. And I appreciate that. I think what I'm getting at
Yeah,
is
as soon as you-
there's a difference. Let me finish. What I'm saying is that there's a difference.
No, I'll do it either way. Oh,
Steve. No, not him, just 1 minute.
all right.
Right. So here's the way let me try to answer it. Okay. Here's the way that my mind works with respect to your question.
No.
I don't look at the building as connected to the self-storage. I think that there are concerns with the self-storage use, right? There are concerns with the self-storage use. Then separate from that, there are concerns with the structure. Is that a fair way to?
Okay.
But do you understand what I'm saying? So. Yep. So I think the comparison that I'm trying to make is, and this is based on what our planning consultant put in his report, more specifically related to the fiscal benefits to the town. The structure, the form of the structure, the size of the structure falls within what's a permissible use, not a permissible use, a permissible structure, size, volume. What I'm saying to you is that if I took that building and I made it apartments, this conversation goes away. Because it's say that again? And right, and then you have to ask, I guess from my perspective is, does the town want 100 units? Is that what the vision is for this property? Okay. No. What he's saying is that we would never have been able to enter into a PNS. There will not be. Okay, so listen. Here's the reality. Your regs, your planning board, our PNS. We don't want to build 100 units on that property, but we can. That was never the goal. No, it's not. So it's general commercial in the front, it's rural general and
Residential general.
residential general, excuse me, in the back.
You guys are playing by the rules, got all your numbers in order, you did your homework. But there's like 35 people in this room that just don't want it there. It doesn't belong there. So you're gonna contradict the residents that live around that building and go ahead and put it up? It just, we're all taxpayers.
Well, he's not saying that the storage facility is going to go up, because if we don't change the zone, that's not going. But what he's saying is he has the right to put a building up that size for residential.
I'm just
So whether you're
making the
looking at apartments or a building, he can build something that big.
Making the comparison.
The neighbors don't want it, the residents don't.
So the only comparison I'm trying to make is the envelope of the building. I'm just trying to say that you may not want to look out at a 3-story structure, whether it's us or it's somebody else. A 3-story structure is a permitted building in that lot, on that lot. It's not, we're not trying to get you to do something that is outside of the building envelope allowable uses. Say again?
Right, well, one at a
Hold
time,
on.
please.
Excuse me,
One person at a time.
One at a
please.
time. And I'd like to get back to this too and kind of wrap this up for one thing, because
What I think we're not hearing is the principle of how this is going to directly benefit the town. We're not hearing that, we're not hearing how
how it's going to improve the community or touch some quality of life for families. I mean, a ribbon cutting day, we're looking to say congratulations to one worker that's working at this unit. And it's hard to celebrate that. This has to be a win first for the town. And so I know you say, I don't do this, but you hear people say, I don't think so. So I think we need to go back to the drawing board.
Okay. So now, hang on 1 second. First of all, may I say to you that I looked at the zoning of it, and it's, you can put a 40 unit. I've never seen anything about 100. I don't want to scare anybody. I seen 40, never seen anything for 100, male and body.
Yes, if I may, I just think, needs an explanation as to when we signed P&S for this property. And speaking with a number of the councilmen at that time, our main concern was for the front part of that parcel, and that there be two significant businesses, something upscale, a Starbucks, Chick-fil-A, something that would bring people to our town, something a little more upscale. Never ever any thought at that time, by the way, of a storage facility in the back portion of that property, whether you know it or not. Based on, what we're hearing, and I don't know how much longer you will continue to try to propose this, but for the record, I could only maybe give you a suggestion, try to think about putting something else on the back portion of that property. And I will say this, and let everyone get to know that, and part of that agreement with the P&S that we told, by the way, I have no idea how much I respect the way you handle this hearing tonight. I don't know what I do with that. But in any case, I don't know how much more time that you're going to want to put into this. This is not to tell you, I'm not telling you, but based on what I'm hearing, and what you heard, I think you're gonna have to post something else on that back portion. And by the way, if it's something that you do there, then you might have to move in that direction, but I also want to explain to everyone here, we're not signing on the dotted line until we collectively, the council and our office, agree as to the use of the property. I made that perfectly clear. And I will repeat it again. My main concern at the time was the front parcel of that property. We didn't want a little row of stores. And everyone is debating, well, I can go across the street for $18 a foot. No, I'll go here for 16. Then he comes back, no, I'll go here for 15. Then it just becomes. But I don't know what else to say. We'd love to work with a company such as yours. You guys are. It's just that this particular use of this property, I think, is going to be an issue, and it's not easy for me to tell you. I want to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. That note.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, listen, I know I'm a PC guy, so, right, so let's wrap it up. And listen, I said this to Councilman Bacala when I walked in here. It's okay to disagree, and it's okay for, it doesn't make us in opposition of one another. We wanted to come here. We wanted to explain to you why we thought that there were merits. We appreciate the comments. Does not fall on deaf ears. Thank you very much. And thank you.
Listen, and I want to listen, again, I want to commend you on your presentation. You did a great job. I'm not, I really wish I could say to go build it. Your qualifications are not in question with me.
Thank you all very much. Thank you all very much.
Yeah.
Adjourn it. Motion to adjourn. All right, good.